everybody, welcome to the Engadget Show, brought to you by Verizon. This is our CES 2014 Vision Quest, and I am joined by my spirit animal, Terrence O'Brien.
And I'm joined by my spirit animal, Brian Heater.
This is actually the last day of CES. It's a perfect time to look at the trends of the show.
And the perfect time to gaze into our deeply bagged and sagging eyes.
I would advise against it. You might turn into a pillar of salt. We're going to start things off by looking at some of the classic trends from the show. You got your TVs, you got your mobile devices, you got your laptops.
Yeah, and specifically, curved TVs and transforming TVs.
But don't take it from us. Take it from people who actually know about these things.
The big trends at CES 2014 for TVs were definitely Ultra HD. All the manufacturers, whether you're the big manufacturers like LG, Sony, Sharp, Samsung, all had 4K TVs to show. Some of the companies even had content to put to them. I think Samsung had the most content. You're going to get Netflix, Comcast, DirecTV. All of these companies are bringing 4K over the internet. We're not quite ready for 4K through Blu-ray discs or on cable, but if you go to the store and you want a high-end TV, it's going to be Ultra HD. The other new TV technology that's out is OLED. LG was probably the biggest on that. They had curved OLED. They had a flexible OLED TV that actually bends. It looks like magic. You're standing there in front of this massive 77-inch TV, and out of nowhere it just bends. It does something that you would never expect a television to do. Other than that, some of the other things we've seen home theater-wise, Sony had some crazy projectors showing. They had their LifeSpace. They have a $40,000 projector that lays basically on the ground, just kind of out of the way. And then when you turn it on, boom, you've got 144-inch Ultra HD on your wall. I think those are the highlights for CES for TVs.
CES is generally a pretty quiet show when it comes to phones because Mobile World Congress is next month and there's a lot of stuff that companies get prepared for. However, we did see a couple interesting phones. One was a 4.3-inch Sony phone, which acted like a flagship, one of the top-of-the-line phones, but it was actually in a small package. That's something that we don't normally see. Normally, companies leave a lot of stuff out when they go with a smaller phone size. On the opposite side of the spectrum, however, we also saw a 6.8-inch phone. This was a Hisense X1, and it is incredibly huge. You're looking at a tablet here, except you can actually make phone calls on it. Aside from that, those are the two big phones. Everything else was pretty much nothing out of the ordinary.
Wearables were everywhere this year. They exploded. It was absurd. Pretty much every company that came to CES had a wearable, even if they've never made anything like that before. Razer, which normally makes game controllers and desktop PCs, has a fitness band. Sony, LG, all these companies. There were some new players like Jaybird, who usually makes Bluetooth headphones, has this thing called Rain, which is kind of aimed at like really serious athletes as opposed to the casual person who just wants to make sure they're walking around enough. That was a really awesome and particularly unique product. It was the only wearable that really seemed to take things beyond where the industry already is. Beyond that, though, it was just sort of the commodification of that particular product category. So next year, you're going to see, fancy pedometers and smartwatches on the shelves of basically every store from every company. You'll be able to buy one at Walgreens and CVS probably for about $50 if you want to.
MakerBot actually had a keynote at this year's show, which is kind of a big deal. I mean, those things are usually reserved for like the Samsungs and the Sonys of the world. At the beginning of the event, the founder and CEO, Brie Pettis, came out and kind of gave a little bit of a retrospective of the company's involvement. Just 5 years ago, they were in the back of the South Hall, like a small startup. I think they actually won a sponsorship to get there, but they were the only 3D printer company. 5 years later, the South Hall is actually the home to the 3D printer section. I mean, it's probably at least a dozen 3D printing companies, 3D scanning companies, 3D modeling companies. MakerBot, Stratasys, 3D Systems all have these just like gigantic booths over there. And when we were doing the Best of CES Awards, we had a maker category, and honestly, the only things that really made sense to fit in there were 3D printers. But it wasn't that hard to actually pick candidates. The 3D Systems did a sugar and chocolate printer, a ceramic printer, some really cool consumer-facing printers, and MakerBot's consumer-facing 3D printers were just like beautiful, beautiful machines. I mean, removable magnetic print heads, totally cloud-based. You can print from your phone. You can monitor them from your phone. There's a full color screen. It really feels like these are rapidly becoming consumer-facing devices. And maybe we'll look back at CES 2014 and say that this is the point where it all started.
The big auto trends for this year are, what I've seen so far are automation for one. There's been a big push with self-parking cars from BMW, this autonomous car that we saw from BMW as well. Also the switch from an analog system to a digital system, and I think that's a big change. And you know, I think a lot of drivers are maybe even going to have a problem with that. So where previously you had a car with analog gauges for RPM or for RPM and for your speed, now that switched to an all digital system. So there's safety and concerns as well. But aside from that, people are, since day one of cars, they've seen these analog gauges. So that's a huge shift. But I think the biggest one is, of course, automation.
Thanks to Verizon for sponsoring us this month.
Yes.
Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks to Terrence for standing next to me and picking out a really nice sweater.
Thank you, Brian, for letting me stand next to you and share this screen real estate with your lovely blue eyes.
Wasn't my choice. Wasn't my choice. Thanks to Todd and Ben for helping us make the show.
Yeah, they always do an awesome job.
Thanks to everybody on the Engadget staff. Thanks obviously to Tim.
And thanks to Darren, and
yeah, thanks to Josh Trapolsky.
Yeah,
and Josh Frulinger who started this thing. This is my last ever Engadget show. I don't know, could be the last ever Engadget show, because really, why would you continue a thing after I left the thing?
I can't think of a reason.
I'm like Galactus, the destroyer of worlds.
The world won't be the same without you, Brian.
Yeah.
We'll miss you.
I'm dying. I felt like this was the venue to let you guys know. Seriously though, thanks everyone for joining us. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's been crazy. We've been traveling all over the world making the show. Ben, who's behind the camera right now, I think at one point we were like somewhere in the country looking at, I don't know, could be robots, could be spaceships, can't really remember.
One of those things. Something insane.
Not really that pertinent to the story, but he turned to me and said, you know what, probably this isn't going to last forever.
And he was right.
In the words of Essie Hinton, nothing gold can stay. Stay gold, pony boy. Stay gold, Engadget.
Can we go home now?
I don't think we have a choice.